Hello, everyone. My name is Alanna Levenson, and I am here with my guest, Crystal Givens, who I will introduce to you in just a moment. And we are here to have another conversation about the Co-Living Companion, a comprehensive guide to cohabitating with others successfully. So who am I? I am a coach, and I've been coaching for over 19 years. I do mostly business coaching and executive coaching, leadership coaching in a different realm, but this is a passion project for me. This is a book that I wrote about 20 years ago, and it just kept rewriting it, and finally decided to do something with this. And this project has taken on a life of its own. So I'm very excited that I get to interview subject matter experts and have guests that can support my audience and some of the readers, depending on what experience you're going through. And often the reason that you might need to make a change in your living situation, either because you want to or you need to, which could also be financially, is because of divorce or grieving from the loss of a loved one. So this is why I have Crystal. And Crystal, to give you a little sense of who she is a country farm girl from Northern Illinois who moved to Los Angeles. And I love that. I actually lived in LA for 16 years, so part of my history too. And shortly after her children were born, she emotionally started to unravel and discovered a grief recovery support group. That life-changing experience revealed to her that she had discovered her life's work. So she went to the Grief Recovery Institute, and she was trained as a grief recovery specialist 17 years ago. So, wow, you've been doing this work for a long time. Yeah. So thank you, Crystal, for being here. All right. So I know you've had a chance to take a look at the book, and I know we're going to talk a bit about this, but just share with us a little bit about your work and some of the challenges that you see, say, newly divorcees or widowers going through in starting over, and that might relate to a new living situation.
Yes, thank you. So what I do is I teach an evidence-based educational program to help people recover from any type of loss. And you're right, divorce, death, a move, that is a life-changing experience. It's a loss. And it can be so overwhelming. And there's a lot of emotions. I like to describe grief. It's like an emotional roller coaster. There's extreme highs, extreme lows. It's heavy. And again, it's overwhelming. And when we're faced with making life decisions like, where am I going to move? Who am I going to live with? Can I afford it? It's hard sometimes to think clearly, especially if we're fresh out of a divorce or a death or some other type of loss. So I love your book because it's a very simple, straightforward guideline. You can just kind of go through it without having to think, because honestly, what I have learned in these 17 years is that grief takes us out of the moment. We're not emotionally present. So again, it's hard to make decisions that are best for us. And so what the beauty of what you wrote is, you can kind of keep the emotions aside and just go through it. And you have to think, but if you're an emotional wreck and crying and upset, you can still focus on reading your book and to help you make decisions. And I love what you said, what's important to me. Because when we're coming out of a loss, most of us, we're struggling with finding who we are, what we want, what we don't want. And it's hard to think through that. So again, we need support, and your guideline is just beautifully written. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When I wrote this, none of this was part of my thinking. I just wrote it because, over 20 years ago, I had some experiences that I thought might help others. And then over the years, I had more experiences that I thought would also help others. I never thought that this guide, as you called it, could help people going through deeper emotional challenges because, like you said, there's so many layers that when you go through, say, a divorce or the loss of a loved one, the emotion takes over. And, I know you know this as a coach, and whoever's listening to this, you may have heard this before too, that making decisions and making big moves while you're going through a deep sense of grief or fear or not feeling grounded in some way is probably not the best thing to do, because you might not make the best decisions. And so, who knew that this guide or ebook would be a useful resource or tool for people, so that as they're processing those emotions, that they have something just practical that they can refer to
Yes.
recognize, to take a look at, like, oh gosh, am I about to make a bad decision? Or how can I approach this, leaving my emotions out, and make sure that I'm doing the right thing for myself right now?
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. You also, I appreciated what you said about that when people go through these hard emotional experiences, that it prompts these big life questions or big life journey identity questions of, who am I? And then there's the practical ones like affordability, because you never know what the outcome is going to be for somebody when they're going through divorce. Or, I've heard of situations. I'm now at an age where I unfortunately know a couple of women who have lost their husbands, and the financial situation that they find themselves in was not what they thought it was going to be. So I don't know if there's anything that you can share about that too. Yeah.
Well, I'll just share from my life because I am newly divorced, and I had no idea how painful it was going to be, even though I was glad my marriage was over. But I could probably share for an hour everything I learned, but I'm going to stay within our time constraint. But you're right. All the layers of the instant, oh my gosh, how am I going to provide for myself? I got to find a place to live. Who am I going to live with? And I know for myself, I felt I was overcome by so much fear and overwhelmed. Like, what step do I take? And then how do I support my children? Should I get another job? I had to rehome my dog. I mean, layer after layer after layer of situations that I was forced and to face, and it was overwhelming. And if it wasn't for the grief recovery tools that I have and resources like your book to wait, pause, think, get the emotions out of the way. I need to approach this in a factual way. And I had to separate my emotions and deal with those separately again, so that I can focus on these decisions I needed to make. And I did move into a townhome that a former grief recovery client happened to have available. And so my son and I were able to move in here. And again, the resources in your book, we set expectations, what we wanted, from the cleaning to the food to the bills. And it was just a perfect resource. So again, because I was an emotional wreck, I'll be honest, but I'm not anymore. And I've landed, and like you, this is my passion, helping people not remain stuck and confused and alone in whatever life experience they're going through.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that. So, that I also didn't think about how this guide can make someone feel like, hey, you're not alone in this. There's other people out there that are going through this too. And these are the kinds of things that we understand you're going to have to think about, and to please do it in a way that is most meaningful and relevant to you. And that confusion part of it, right? I would imagine that depending on the situation that you're finding yourself in, not only are you grieving over the loss, grieving over the dream or the vision that you had, and maybe ending up in a place that you never thought you would, and then trusting that the direction that you're going in or what you do next is going to be the right thing, because the last thing you want to do is find yourself in another situation or another experience where it's just going to be another downward spiral, and that will just layer on top of what you're already going through. And so, having something like this as a tool or resource can help alleviate some of that confusion, or at least inspire you to think about things in a different way. That maybe it's sort of like that, what you don't know, or you don't know to think about.
Exactly. And that's the thing, when we're grieving, going through losses, when our hearts are broken, where are the tools? Where are the resources? And when we need to relocate, when we need to make some other life decisions, again, where do we find the resources? So I love that we can promote this book, this resource to help people, because people desperately need guidance and support, because we're not meant to go through life alone. We need connection, we need information, acceptance, kindness, and just a ton of support when we're going through hard times. Speaking from a lot of experience.
Yeah. Well, at this point in our lives, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So when you have a lot of experience to draw from personally, as well as, having done this for a really long time. So, how can starting fresh with some kind of co-living companion be healing or a growth opportunity for someone?
It can be healing. What's most important is the person that you're living with, that, like you referred to in your book, to have good communication and listening skills. That is vital, that you are going to be living with someone that you feel safe with. And what I mean safe, obviously physically goes without saying, but emotionally, that you can come home. Like my son and I, we have this great I call him my roommate, even though he's my son. Hey, roommate. But we have this understanding. Do you want to talk? Was it a hard day, or you just want quiet? I don't want to talk. Okay. So I don't take it personally, and vice versa. He doesn't take it personally. But there's this mutual respect and understanding that, I need to talk. Can you listen? I'm not looking for advice. I just need a safe place to fall apart. And I think that is the foundation of any great living environment, where there's that safety, that confidentiality, and no judgment. No one not trying to fix me or give me a little label, but just love me and accept me. And the same with my partner, my roommate.
What I appreciate about what you just shared is the opportunity to be other-centered, as I call it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would imagine too, like going through a hard situation of, divorce or grieving the loss of a loved one, that you can be very in your own heart and head. And sometimes it can be helpful to, if you have the bandwidth, the emotional bandwidth, because I understand that sometimes you might not, to seek outside of yourself and look at who's in front of you and look at, well, what do they need? What would work best for them? And by, contributing to that, it will usually make that person want to give that right back to you. And so, creating that dynamic or relationship, and how interesting and unique for you to be able to do that and redefine your relationship with your son.
Yeah.
Right. By living in this way together.
Yes. And I didn't have it in my marriage, but I finally have it, and my son too, to come home to a safe, calm, peaceful environment. And we love it and we protect it. But kind of going back to what you're saying about being other-centered, you're spot on, because I know for me, like if I'm down in the dumps or just kind of in a funk, I will text somebody or talk to somebody and encourage them. Just say, hey, I was thinking about you. I really appreciate this, or just something positive. And I always leave encouraged, refreshed. And my spirit or my energy just went up, and I feel like I'm at a better place. but that takes effort, you know? It's like, okay, I need to do something to get out of this. And that's why I love having a roommate, because it's not good to be alone. I mean, sometimes, but I know I need people in my life.
Yeah. And like right now, I'm not living with anybody else, but over the last few years, there have been a few times that I have, and sometimes it's been great. Sometimes it hasn't been great. And I've got some learning from those experiences too, and opportunities to, let's just say, practice my own tools.
Yes. Well, before I got married, I must have lived with 30 different women. So I could give all the do's and don'ts. I could write an addendum to your book.
Well,
I'll never forget the $800 phone bill that nobody knew, you know.
well, I've got that almost that same exact example in there. It wasn't mine, but it was a friend of mine from college. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it was college.
True. Yeah. So interesting. But yeah, it's when we're feeling kind of down in the dumps, or things feel heavy, and shoot, I mean, there's a lot happening in the world right now that just, if we consistently focus on it, we could let us just knock us off our be ungrounded, let's just say. And so sometimes just instead of me just, thinking about myself, it's helpful to think about someone else and like, oh, I haven't reached out to this person in a while, or I haven't. So sometimes just to send a quick text or WhatsApp message, or say, hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you?
Right.
Yeah. So in this work that you've done, and, if possible, in relation to, say, living with others, like, what have you seen or observed that works well, and what you have observed or experienced that does not?
Well, I'm thinking of one situation in particular where the mom and dad built, their son just got married, and they're planning on having a baby. So they built an addition to their home. So happy to help out their new family. Well, they did not factor in the money for the build out, the extra utilities, and the money and the co-sharing of the kitchen and cooking until the place was finished. So long story short, it was a disaster.
Oh, no.
A lot of tension, a lot of anger. It took months for them to navigate through to figure it out. But if they had some resources or guidelines on the front end, all of that drama and tension could have been prevented.
Yeah. I think people, best intentions.
Yeah, exactly.
People get caught up in this would be so great. We'll build an addition to the house, and you'll be close.
I'll be a happy family.
I'll be good grandparents. Like, this is going to be great. And then not so much. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's all good for them now. It's a lovely situation, but it was bumpy.
Yeah. Oh, well, and then that sort of thing too, especially if somebody might have to make a quick decision and they didn't realize it, how can they still approach it with intention? So, yeah, because we just never know what's that?
And a lot of grace.
Yes. Grace for yourself, grace for others. Right. Again, best intentions, because otherwise we can get caught up in it too. Yeah. So what tips would you give someone related to moving forward in their life and the possibility of living with someone new?
Well, I think what's most important, obviously this is coming from my line of work, is it's hard for us to move forward until we've taken care of what we're trying to move forward from, because unresolved emotional pain from any of our losses, it doesn't go away. It goes into a suitcase that we take with us when we move. That suitcase goes into another relationship, and then there's more baggage. So my biggest piece of advice is take care of what's unresolved, any unfinished emotional business, so you can be emotionally present and make the best decisions for yourself as you move forward.
Yeah, that's it.
Because again, back to, grief, emotional pain, it just takes us out, and we do things, we say things that we wish we hadn't, and it just makes it worse. And then we might start acquiring destructive behaviors, and then we might just settle, lose ourselves, and settle for a roommate that is not a good fit, and they bring their baggage in, and then it's more pain, more drama, and just making our lives more complicated. And I think the older I get, I want less, I want simple, and just help people and keep it drama free as much as possible.
Yeah. So I've seen a little bit of what you're talking about, not just in this similar types of scenarios, but also, in coaching people on careers or jobs where if they haven't worked through any emotional trauma or discomfort or resentment or anger from, say, a previous role, they're going to bring that to their interview process, or if they get the job, they're going to bring it to their next job experience, and then they're going to wonder why they find themselves in a similar situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, people don't know what to do. That's why there's you and me, and we want to help people, give them these resources so we can stop the pain and just get back to living in the life that we've always dreamed we wanted to have. And as you and I both know, life never works out the way we wanted to, but well, let's get some tools and information for when it doesn't work out the way we want it, so that we can recover and move forward.
Yeah. What also comes to mind is, like, say, depending on what your scenario is, whether you did lose a loved one or you find yourself in a divorce situation that maybe you didn't want or see coming, and there's that anger and resentment about it. Are you going to bring that to the next experience? Or in living forward, are you going to look at this as, okay, instead of this is happening to me, maybe this is happening for me in some way. And, how can I step forward into what's next for myself in a really intentional, purposeful, powerful way that is going to help me grow as a person, become better as a person, become more self-aware, or to practice being in relationship with others, which has a lot to do with communication, listening, like we were saying before. And then I remember in another conversation, I was talking with somebody about how all of that actually can help you prepare for maybe the next partner that comes along. You never know.
Right. And I agree. It's so important that we lean in to what happened, embrace it, all the good and the bad, the sweet and sour, and learn and to take ownership, responsibility, and not, it's easy to kind of be in that victim. Well, they did this, they did that. No. Oh, wait a minute. What do I need to take responsibility for? What do I wish I would have done differently, better, or more, so that I can change and take responsibility and be aware of what I want to do differently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Well, how many, I don't like repeating my mistakes.
No, I think most people don't like repeating mistakes. And then we get frustrated when we realize, like, this is happening again? Really? I have to learn from this again? Like, yeah, I get, a little perturbed about that too. I'm like, God, really? This is showing up again?
I know. I thought I had it down.
Yep. Well, that's part of the human journey, right? So,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say is one of the most practical parts of this guide that people might fail to notice, or what they don't know to consider?
I think the first one that struck me, and is what I've had to learn myself after going through my divorce, is, hey, what's really important to me? Because in a marriage or any other type of relationship, I know for me, I was so focused on raising my children, with my husband, supporting his line of work, and I lost me. So now that I'm on my own, what is important to me? So that really, that section helped me just pause and reflect, and a lot of great questions there.
Perfect. I love that. And I don't know about you, but I'm now in my 50s, and when I
They're
look
the
back,
new 30s. They're the new
you're so kind. No, it's when I think back to, what was important to me in my 20s, or what was important to me in my 30s or in my 40s, and then where I am right now. It's constantly evolving and changing. And so it's how often do we take the time to ask ourselves that, what do I need right now? What is most important to me and why? What's going to serve me the most, especially if I do choose to live with someone else, depending on who that person is. It could be a son, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a total stranger that you open yourself up to. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
agree. And I think what's really important for us to be kind, like we said earlier, and to give ourselves a lot of grace. And most of all, I like to say to be curious. People say, "Oh, I don't want to be alone. I can't see myself living alone." And I try to get them to explore that. So, what is it about being alone that you don't like? And to sit with it. And we're just uncomfortable with pausing, being quiet with ourselves because we just want to go, go, go and fix it and get our lives all figured out. But it doesn't work that way. So if we could just really take that time, because we deserve it. If we could just value ourselves more, love ourselves more, like, you deserve greatness. I deserve greatness. We deserve what our hearts desire, but we don't stop and ponder and think about what do our hearts desire. It's never going to happen. We're just going to react and rebound and go from this situation to that situation. Well, that didn't work. Well, let me try this one. I don't want to live that way. I want to live with intention.
Yeah. It's funny because I've had people in my life actually tease me for being so intentional. And years ago, I used to get uncomfortable with it. And then I think over the last few years, as I get more comfortable in my own skin, as you do when you get older,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I am. And I really like that about myself. And I can see how it's been empowering and helpful to me to really think about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. I don't get my head about it, right? I mean, I can. And then if I notice that I'm doing that, then, I'll either reach out to a friend or I'll just kind of do some self-reflection and say what's going on with that for me, and dig a little bit deeper. But otherwise, it's like, no, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's my intention here? How is this going to serve me? How is this going to help me? How is it going to help other people in what I'm trying to achieve? How is this relationship about, going to relationships? How is this going to, or even creating relationships with people like yourself and monetizing and promoting this book? Like, I'm very intentional about why I'm doing this. And I think it's a great win-win for me, for you, for the audience who gets to watch this. Or, you know what I mean? So, yeah. So, those of you that are watching this, I invite you to just practice it. Just practice being intentional, practice reflecting and giving that time to yourself, like Crystal suggested, because how often do we give that to ourselves? It's a gift, because otherwise we can get really caught up in the day to day. And I got to do this and I got to do that. And I'm going to spiral. And or because of the emotions, people don't want to think about it. They don't want to feel it. And so then they just move on to the next thing. And then they don't even realize that moving on to that next thing, because they weren't being as intentional about it as they could be, that then they'll have to, that's just another experience they're going to learn from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
So, yeah. So to wrap up, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be good for the audience to know, either about the book, about grieving, about, this kind of work, or anything else we've talked about?
I think a lot of times people don't know that they're grieving.
Ah, wow. That's
I didn't.
big.
I
Okay.
didn't. remember my introduction, or your introduction you gave to me? You said I was unraveling after my children were born. That was the beginning of my grief. I was grieving the loss of my mom. She's still alive. She just never showed up to help me be a mom. She never showed up to see my kids. And I just pushed it down and I got busy being a mom, but that pain didn't go away. And it was a very, very, very painful time for me. So, we're all walking around with these burdens of emotional pain and unresolved losses. And it's affecting our ability to make, decisions about where am I going to live? What kind of roommate do I want? Can I afford this monthly rent? Do I want to move? I mean, grief, again, it takes us out. It interferes with our ability to take care of ourselves the way that we deserve.
That's super powerful to even just take a moment to acknowledge I'm grieving. That is really powerful. Wow. Thanks for sharing that as a great way to end this. Thank you so much for your contribution to this, for your time. I hope the audience who watched this got some good nuggets out of this conversation. So, Crystal, how can people connect with you and find you if they'd like to do that?
Thank you. They can connect with me on my website. It's ebbandflowcos.com. So that's ebbandflowcos.com. And the COS stands for Colorado Springs. Or they can email me at Crystal, CRYSTAL, at ebbandflowcos.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. And yes, and it's important to also note here that, if you're local to being able to work with Crystal, awesome. And she also works with people. You don't have to be. So if you really connect with Crystal from watching this, please reach out to her. She's also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I will include those links below. So, Crystal, thank you again for your time and your contribution. And I so appreciate you being a part of this.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed our conversation. I have to go back and listen to it.
Awesome. I love it. I will definitely, I'll send the recording to you after it's done. And I'm excited to get this launched. So thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.